Jar of Marble family and the Jar of Marble curious. My name is Linda and this is Jar of Marbles. I hope that you've had a good week. It's all just so very exciting, isn't it? You know, everything's just speeding on by. I think it's a bit of a conspiracy, really. Like, is there really 24 hours in a day? Certainly doesn't feel like it. It feels like maybe 11.5 tops. But anyway, I digress. Was just thinking about the things that I've actually stopped doing. It's kind of interesting. You do get to a point in your life where you realise, you know what? I don't do that anymore. So I thought I would just pull it apart and put it back together again and see what we think. I hope that you enjoy it. So 8 things I have stopped doing. The first thing I've stopped doing was expecting honesty from those who are not honest with themselves. Now, that does take a few spins around the planet to truly understand that one, or even to know that it's a thing. You would have heard the saying, consider the source. So when you are told a piece of information and you'd like to believe it, consider who told you. Are they known for inventing stories, or are they just flat out liars? Then I'd be very wary of believing anything they say. People who tell porkies are not honest with themselves, and therefore you can never really expect the truth from them. This is where we can give people we'd like to be close to or feel we should have a warm connection with way too much credit. The reality is that is often not ever possible. It's a dead end. How many times do we need to go down a dead end and get spat out of it and be let down yet again? There are some old sayings like a leopard cannot change its spots that will forever ring true. Oh my goodness, that is true. People really change, and that is also a truth. Everyone has their individual personality traits, their basic characteristics. People are who they are. I'm not saying that we cannot improve and develop ourselves. Of course we can, and most assuredly we can. I am referring to those who have repeatedly shown you their true colours, and for you to expect more is nuts. Hence why when someone shows you who they are, believe them. So 2, reconnecting with those who I had outgrown. Like so many experiences in life, you have to experience dark to know light. Our memories can be laced with only the good times when it comes to people we have sort of actually outgrown. We might go through a quiet patch and you start thinking about someone you used to hang out with, and why do we always remember the good times? The reality is reconnecting can be an awful mistake, and I have never heard of a successful reconnection with the original association, especially if it was toxic. And why have they not reached out to you? No good will ever come from that. Again, though, we humans, we may need to do it a few times just to be sure, you know. And when you do finally kick them and the whole situation to the curb, you will find you actually have zero interest in them, especially when they remind you why you created distance from them in the first place. Or maybe they created distance with you. However it came about, going back is never the option you would advise a loved one. That's why it is so very important to develop your own self-esteem and self-respect, your self-value, and of course that's meaning that you're looking out for your own self-care. Then going back is always going to be a hell no. The reality is you will outgrow people. It is a fact of life. You cannot stuff yourself into another person's idea of who they think you ought to be, because sooner or later you will bust out and it probably won't be pretty. If the outgrowing was once a love relationship, you cannot heal where you are broken, especially where there have been attempts with the sole aim to destroy you. Take your confidence, put it in your handbag or your man purse or your backpack, and just leave it where it needs to be, which is behind you. This is one reason why it is so important to cherish and develop and protect your confidence. Develop it in your children. They're going to need bag loads of it in the world. Getting to the stage of standing for yourself is a sign of growth, which is very empowering, and I love that. A third thing that I've stopped doing, ignoring my intuition. We are amazing creatures, us humans. We have senses that warn us and get our attention. How many times have you had the feeling to not go somewhere or to go somewhere and later you were proven correct? How many of us have ignored that feeling like a dull ache of warning, but we can be so determined to will our will so willfully that we don't listen to our good selves. We get feelings about a person, how you can instantly like or dislike a person. That is like a really real thing, isn't it? I can get very clear impressions and then I don't always, invite them in. Just sometimes about upcoming events and quietly, I'll sort of enjoy the accuracy when things come to be. Sometimes also over the years, I do recognise patterns and likelihoods embedded in human life where myself, can predict with some certainty the outcomes of things or other events. I have no explanations as to how I have known such details. Sometimes it just isn't black and white. It's logical. And then it is anything but logical. That logical part requires satisfaction and a reasonable set of variables to work with, doesn't it, in order to make sense of your world. And when you can't find it, logic just cannot be factored in sometimes. And you know what? I can live with that. We all walk life to our own drumbeat, don't we? We see and we hear life differently.
I can't play the drums.
Oh, can't you, Bob? Do you play any instruments?
I'm a bit of a pianist.
Come on then, play us a tune then, Bob. Well, good evening, everybody. Glad that you could make it tonight. I'm your pianist. My name's Bob the pianist. And let's go. Wow, you really are a bit of a dark horse, Bob.
No, I'm not.
Well, I think you are. That was pretty special. Anyway, moving on. You've blown my lights out a little bit here, Bob.
No.
Number 4, trying to fit into social boxes or someone else's design. This can happen without you realising that it is dangerous, as in you are risking losing yourself in order to be accepted by another person or group. I recall starting a job many years ago. I loved this job and I became really friendly with this lady who was the state manager and another few of the co-workers. I hadn't put together at that stage of my life that I was so accepting of people that it could be detrimental in the wrong company. So we're talking quite some time ago now. I don't think I had heard of the word detrimental either, or had any reason to actually use the word.
Detrimental rises sentimental.
Yes, Bob, quite right. Anyway, so this was many years ago. They were all about talking about their superannuation, the wealth waiting for them in retirement, their investment homes, how much they were worth, how much money they had in the bank. Oh, God, put me to sleep now. I really did find it all a bit uncouth and lowbrow that they would talk about such matters openly. I'd never actually met people that actually did that. It was like sitting on a set watching people just, behave badly. This is before, we had, those shows where reality shows, for example. Anyway, I just never heard of people who spoke like that. And clearly it was a competition. And there was this sort of self-declared leader there, the so-called manager, who was also the millionaire. But it was never going to work because there are many things I'm not, but I am my own person. And I've never been compelled to talk about money really with strangers, and especially in a competitive sense. And just never really at all. I have zero desire to make others feel less. And I say that because this was what all this was about. God, it was so boring. They could have hired themselves out as laxatives, I swear. But anyway, moving on. So, of course, ultimately, I would be making myself unavailable, didn't turn up to what they considered important, earth-shatteringly important events. I'd suddenly just get food poisoning, not really, and go do my own thing. That's a classic me move. Ding-dongs are trying to control me or play unhappy games. I will invent myself right out of a situation. And guilt? No, not a sausage. No guilt. Who cares? Do they? Nope. Nor do I. Ha ha. I highly recommend, and I have told the biggest stories to get out of situations, one-offs, and I find it hilarious. I mean, oh my God, I do not know how many times my father's died to get me out of situations, but at least he came in handy for something, right? Anyway, I mean, what are they going to do? Not invite me anymore? Good, thank God.
Oh, yeah, thank God. They drove me crazy.
You and me both, Bob. Now, that was such an invaluable lesson, and I'm glad I had it, as it made me sit up straight and double take my position and make sure that I was the one that was behind the driver's seat. It had served a purpose, which was opening a new space to take action or not, but I recall feeling a sense of relief and gratitude that I didn't have to do any heavy lifting or feel compelled to be a part of that group. As it is, since has all disbanded. Someone must have just, made more money somewhere along the line. Who knows? But shallow 101, not for me. So, feeling guilty for putting my own needs first, that would be number 5. Quite often, we can feel unaware of our people-pleasing habits. More than that, it feels like who you are. You're a nice person. More often than not, it is linked to not having your emotional needs met as a child. Of course, there are many other reasons, but in this instance, I can only really refer to my own experiences and how it felt and what I did to relieve myself of the pain. Once I'd realised what it was that was creating the repetition of similar situations in my life, I'd noticed that these experiences, that everything in my life, whether I liked it or not, was here for my benefit. And the same for you. It helped to put this spin on it. With a lot of reading and listening to a lot of thought leaders, I had started to join the many dots. Through that, the short of it was that the little bumps and the big bumps in our lives are always, always, always about getting you to where you need to be. This involves quietening the mind, and this can be achieved in many ways. Not necessarily meditation, as most people sort of expect, people to suggest, although if you can and have that practice, then you'll know that it is a good one. But, it's doing the simple things, because it's quietening the mind, which is like you could do that through painting, sketching, designing, gardening, sewing, whatever it is that that when you do it, you just forget everything and you feel good. A long, comfortable drive. I love driving, and I call my little trips in the car adventures.
Oh, I can take it or leave it, driving.
Oh, thanks for your feedback, Bob. It felt uncomfortable, to say the least, when I was beginning to consciously put my needs first. It was so foreign, and every impulse was saying, pull out, pull out. Thanks, Bob. It wasn't like I had a neon sign on my head or at the front of the house, but I started to pause before I said yes. I checked my calendar even if I knew I had no appointments, and that actually started me making appointments and fulfilling them, because I had created a habit of cancelling. I was cancelling myself out. I mean, oh my goodness. It was far too much bother for me to do this for me. We're talking a long time ago, but I am a firm believer in keeping an eye on these habits returning. They can just sneak in when you're not looking. So the message is, keep your appointments, and if you don't have any, make at least one. Number 6, saying yes when I wanted to say no to keep the peace. This is connected clearly to number 5. It truly is something that goes sort of something like this. Stop. In between all the obligation, and look at what you can do next to step out of being in someone else's plans. For you. You are allowed to change your mind, says you. Period. Full stop. Sometimes, most times, when you get better at this, I now just say stop to myself. And obviously if I'm out somewhere where I can't say it out loud, in my own mind I just go, stop. Is this what you want to do? Because sometimes we can get so busy that, we just find that we're agreeing to things, or we've agreed, and then we walk away and go, oh, why do I agree to that? Another way I look at it from a bigger picture, will their world fall apart without you? The answer has to be no. They will work it out. You can be the problem. My goodness, I've been the problem in my life, featuring me, starring me, written by me. Get the picture?
Oh, yeah, I get the picture.
I cannot express my joy about that, Bob.
You don't mean that.
Correcto mundo, Bobby boy. The liberation, the freedom, the giving of the power, stick to you. In my life, I have often referred to the power stick as taking back my power in many situations where I had fallen prey to another's requirements of me. Taking back my power stick is so empowering. No one can see your power stick. It doesn't live in a cupboard. It's your love and your respect for yourself. Number 7, overthinking situations. I wished I could time travel back and erase bad memories. This can be a real humdinger if we travel too far into the grips of rehashing, reliving situations that we may wish we'd done differently or not at all. Some of us may bypass this and it may never happen to you, and I hope this is the case. But like so many things in life, most of us do not get off scot-free with lessons, and it is up to us to wake up to it. When things stop us in our tracks, it can be so overwhelming that common sense seems to drive right out the door and then off to some far-off land. Next thing you realise, you've just lost months, possibly years of your life. It takes real focus and resolve to refuse to drink the Kool-Aid and get on with what and who that matters. Because while we're busy being lost about something that happened, say, years ago, the ones that matter miss out on you, and you miss out on them. I say, don't let the ding-dongs win. They're sleeping. Well, I can assure you, and not giving you a second thought, I recall being presented with a really unacceptable series of situations. My children were quite young, as in not teenagers, just young girls. And I remember thinking, I am not getting lost in that because these kids need me to be present. I recall thinking also how lucky I was to have these girls, because just by their presence and how wonderful each one of them are, I had zero interest in the other stuff. And that's all it was, stuff, and not my stuff, just fool's errands and lies. They needed the lies, but not I. I had 3 girls I was raising, and I had no time for nonsense. I had no time nor interest. And guess what? They didn't like that. I care not, never have, and never will. You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. So that's that. Number 8. Staying where my energy wasn't reciprocated. It's pretty easy to tell when you're on the same page with people, isn't it? You just feel comfortable around them and they make you feel like sunshine is beaming out of your heart, something like that.
Oh, sunshine out of your heart.
That's exactly how it feels, Bob.
I like that.
I like that too, Bob. I must say, I have been most blessed in my life over the years with the wonderful people I have met. And while some are no longer in my life, whether they've passed over or we've just grown apart, I still feel the glow in my heart for who I knew them as, who I believed them to be, that we do meet people for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. It does play out in your life. It can be so difficult, especially when you have thought someone would be there forever, but it's not always the case. If you feel like you have to hide a part of yourself, then be very careful of spending too much time with those kind. If it's family, limit your time or not at all. I chose not to. I chose no contact with my entire family. Be 30 years now. It was ridiculous, the damage that they would inflict and then deny it, and on top of that invent stories. And after the car had really hit the fan too often and you seem to never be able to make sense of it, I took the walk option. Do you know my phone has not rung in 30 years? Relieved? You bet I am. This is a classic example of being forced to grow. That was the only option. And I remember reading about that as a concept, that when things blow up in our world, it's the universe demanding you to grow. And I just really related to it. And it helped me so much because it made me feel like I was heading in a really positive, direction. Otherwise, the other option would have been being in a straitjacket, rocking back and forth. And no thanks, but thanks. I just don't look great in straitjackets. I like a bit of a scarf, a bit of lipstick, nice shoes. But anyway, here's a segue to suffering fools. No thanks. The reciprocation of your energy is a precious experience. Anyone that doesn't get it, they're just not your people. I do prefer to give chaos a wide berth. I'm in my lane, see right here, and you, chaos, you stay right on over there, chaos. Bye.
Who you saying bye to?
You, Bob, you. Then enough time goes by and maybe you keep a journal. I do. and has been confirmation on many occasions on how far I've come. And when I've read back, oh my goodness, it's just amazing. I've written things that I actually have no recall in writing because it was deep and it was honest and a bit raw in spots. But for me, it has always been a wonderful experience to get confirmation that I have passed a situation that at the time I just couldn't see if it was ever going to end. Once I get the idea to get past a challenge, I'm like a dog with a bone. I am relentless in educating myself to find answers, to not lose too much time in lamenting what cannot be. I think when we have seen the time wasted, it can be frustrating knowing that that time will never be gotten back. Obviously, not all life situations are that cut and dry. I most certainly am not saying that. Get professional help, guidance from a third party, independent of your family or friends. Get coping skills, fantastic investment.
Did somebody say third party?
Yeah, I did, Bob. Why is that?
Makes me think of a song I wrote recently.
Oh, well, let's have it, Bob.
It's the song, third person.
Oh, Bob likes to talk about himself in third person. Let's go. Oh, yeah, Bob likes that. Oh, yeah, Bob likes that a lot.
I gotta say, Bob, you're really something. Do you know that there are people that listen to us who really actually find you quite cute?
I find that quite surprising on a number of levels.
As do I, Bob, as do I. And this brings us to the end of yet another podcast. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I know Bob's enjoyed himself quite a bit this time around. So I hope that some of the suggestions here and stopping doing certain things, you can align with. You've already got that covered. Certainly women in my age group and beyond, there are just things that you just stop doing. And if obviously, you might be at a stage in your life where you're just considering this, changes that you might need to be making. But certainly I am a great believer in just gathering lots of information from lots of different places. And I'd just like to thank you as always for popping by. Say good day to the family and the galah for me. And I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.